Well, good morning, everyone. It's always a pleasure to be around entrepreneurs and fellow Peruvians. What I wanted to do this morning, since I only have 30 minutes, is quickly share my own experience of having come to the Valley to try to succeed, and then how I move and what are the lessons that I learned in the process. So and then I'll try to give about 10 minutes for open Q&A. So this is a bit of the summary of my career. So this is the journey from Tacna, which is the place where I study. I was born in Arequipa, but to Lima to study and eventually to Silicon Valley. You know, I divide that into the 5 areas where we all have in our career. My education started in Peru. Besides being educated in the Jesuits in Tacna, in the school Cristo Rey and all this, I went to La Uni to study electronic engineering. And then right after, around the early 80s, when all the strikes were happening, I got an opportunity to not finish my degree in electronic engineering, but I came to the University of San Francisco with a full scholarship as well to study electronic physics. I ended up doing electronic physics, computer engineering, and computer science. Later in my career, I'll tell you, I ended up doing an executive MBA in Kellogg. But I would say the first 10 years of my work experience were at Apple. It was a life-changing event. I never finished my master's thesis in USF because Apple came recruiting on campus. So I took a risk at the time. Everybody says education is very important, degrees are important, but at the same time, when you try to get work experience that is going to try to help you, you never knew. I took a risk, and that changed my life. Apple later sponsored my MBA at Kellogg, but in that position, I learned how to collaborate, learn, and had lots of sponsors and mentors that helped me throughout my career. After 10 years at Apple, I decided to leave and had really bright career because I had just come back from Kellogg to run a business. But I started my own startup with my wife, actually, a company called Incommerce in the early days of the internet. These technological waves create, people sometimes don't know stuff, therefore if you become a specialist and you work with customers, they want your expertise and are willing to help you design products and all that. That's the way I ended up doing this. So after 2 years of working with leading edge companies here in the West Coast, companies like Schwab, Cisco, Bay Networks and others, they were trying to use the internet to communicate with the customers and supply chains. We ended up designing a product that really helped people you come into a website, provide security, provide personalization, provide a lot of different things that people wanted to use the internet with. And so I ended up having some of the largest banks in the world as customers. We raised venture capital, 42 million, and short of taking the company public. We got acquired in the year 2000 before the bubble, and the company that acquired was a company called Entrust, which is the next company I ended up working for. And it was a great financial transaction. We ended up closing the acquisitions for $1 billion, and ended up joining the board of Entrust. The market crashed, year 2000, the bubble crashed, ended up joining. I was on the board of Entrust, but I ended up stepping in as the CEO to help the company, correct some of the things that the market had not done. Recruited somebody else because I was never trained to be a public company CEO. And then my career in private equity started because many people, since I had experience of working with security companies, Warburg Pincus contacted me and saying, hey, we want to consolidate the industry and we need an expert in this area. And it was through a friend that went to school with me, the importance of networking and keeping in touch with people. Alfred Chuang, who was one of the founders of BEA, which was a company that was very successful here in Silicon Valley, was talking to the vice chairman of Warburg Pincus. They said, hey, I want to do something like we've done in BEA, but in security. He says, who should I work with? Well, you should talk to Alberto because he was my classmate in school, and he was really good, and he can help you. So it's the importance of networking, collaborating, and keeping in touch. And ended up being recruited with Warburg Pincus in New York to help do acquisitions. They had raised a fund of $5 billion, and we almost bought companies like RSA, consolidated things, but September 11 happened, which is in 2001, and the financial industry and markets really went off and couldn't align. And even though we had the money, we couldn't align the type of deal and structure that we wanted to create. Then I got recruited by another private equity firm called Bain Capital to run one of the companies. Typically, they come in, buy a company, and say they bring executives with experience to help them rationalize, recruit the executive team, and try to do another deal. This is another company called in New York called Thor Technologies. They ended up being the executive chairman, and a year later I became the CEO, brought in my former team, keeping in touch, collaborating, working with other people, brought some of the people that helped me be successful in the first go around. And again, we raised additional capital, and then 3 years later, Oracle acquired us, and Oracle acquired us for a lot of money. I had a signing agreement that I would never in my life tell how much money they paid, but it was like 30 times trailing revenue, which is a really good transaction for my investors and for my team. And this time I told the Oracle executives that I was not interested in becoming an Oracle operational executive, but I wanted to become and help them build a new business as an advisor. And I became an advisor to their president of products, a fellow by the name of Thomas Currier. Thomas right now runs Google Cloud. He's the CEO of Google Cloud, but I helped him build a business from pretty much less than 50 million to more than 500 million by the time I left 2.5 years later, and worked with in multiple capacities, helping them build businesses in Latin America, in Japan, in Europe, recruited people. We acquired 3 or 4 companies while I was there. So it was more like an advisor in mentoring also the people that actually were running the business. And again, brought a lot of the different people that I work with in all my former companies, and that's really when you start building that ecosystem of success. So later on, I ended up being recruited by Trident Capital, who is a venture capital firm, because they were the ones that invested with Bain Capital in Thor Technologies, and they made money with me. So why don't you come in and become an entrepreneur in residence and venture partner, so you can help us do investments in the area that you know, which is cybersecurity, the importance of focus. You need to be very focused. Don't try to double around 2 or 3 things that you know well. Eventually one will just become that crossing the chasm, that focus where you could become an expert. So I became a venture partner at Trident Capital. 2 years later, they made me a partner. I began investing in cybersecurity, did about 4 investments. 3 of them exited really, really well. Sold a company to AT&T, was the chairman of the board. So this is how my career as a venture capitalist starts. But 5 years later, after we finished the deployment of capital that funded, they raised in 2010, in 2015, another crucial moment in my career was saying, do I really want to work with this broader team that is doing healthcare IT, energy investments, ad tech, or cybersecurity, or do I really want to focus on cybersecurity? So I ended up leaving and spinning out the group that was doing cybersecurity investments in Trident Capital, and I started my own fund with a couple of other members of the Trident Capital team, Forge Point Capital. And again, nobody trained me to be a venture capitalist, took the risk. I had a very good career, very promising career on the established fund, but it was a new fund. Sometimes you will not be able to raise capital. And even though I was a Latino and everybody said diversity and inclusion, all this money that is coming from the big funds, they're saying, oh, we want to promote women, and nobody wants to take a risk with first-time investors. So I learned a lot in raising money. We raised a $300 million fund, and we just completed deploying that capital. We invested in about 17 companies, of which 3 already find great exits. And now we finished raising our second fund, which is $450 million. So now we're managing $750 million and have recruited a team of about 12 people. And given that we just raised our fund, we're probably going to end up being about 20. So we're probably the largest cybersecurity fund not only in Silicon Valley, but I would say in the world. And we have invested in lots of companies, not only just in the US, but we do a lot of work in Europe and in Japan and other places where we're trying to get the best and brightest to come in, bring them in, and make them successful. Finally, it's not just about your career, but also the involvement, right? When I was in school, like many of you, one of the first organizations that I got involved was SHIP, the Society of Hispanic Engineering Professionals. And, you know, I didn't know anything else, but I think I became president of SHIP of my own university, but it was the involvement, trying to figure out who's there. We visited companies, Intel, other places. And eventually, you know, we founded, with many Hispanics around Silicon Valley, something called Hispanic Net, which, you know, eventually took more than 2,000 entrepreneurs that were Hispanic and Spanish descent, and it's gone on its own for now. And then I got involved with a group called Endeavor, which is very active in Peru, and we're talking about the bridge between the U.S. and Peru. I think we should figure out how we work with Endeavor, because a lot of the large economic groups are on the board, and they're working really closely with Startup Peru, with lots of different things, but I've been a mentor and an investor in Endeavor. Eventually, my company's got a name to the World Economic Forum, and since I was chairman of the board, I became a member of the World Economic Forum as part of the Technology Pioneers Program in growth companies. Eventually, the next thing that I wanted to give back and was trying to really help the community, we founded something called HITECH, the Hispanic IT Executive Council, and I encourage many of you to get involved with it. It's trying to recognize and try to build a community of Hispanics in technology. We call it Hispanic, Latino, we ended up calling it Hispanics, but it's one of the largest accumulations. Go to hitechglobal.org, hitechglobal.org. We sponsor events throughout the year in the largest and best companies in the world, Facebook, Apple, Bank of America. The next summit is happening here in the Silicon Valley. It's sponsored at Oracle. Many of your corporations are sponsors. And we have the lineup of speakers, which is a dream, right? We had, all the way from all the CEOs of Oracle, Cisco. We got Eddie Q from Apple to speak last year. And so it's a group that is trying to push up and pull up. Push up meaning, you need to try to help your fellow collaborators to help in growing their careers, but also pulling up. And we do a lot of work with communities, with inroads, with a lot of programs in the Cristo Reyes schools and a lot of different things. So the importance of giving back is huge because you will get more than what you receive. So it ended up also getting in, since I went into the venture capital, I ended up being on the board of the National Venture Capital Association to learn more about it. The reason why they accepted me was was the token Latino. There are not that many Latinos in venture capital, so try to drive for diversity and inclusion in an industry that is super elitist. Because if you think that you're having problems just coming from middle management to get into you need to be and becoming a CEO, and there's very few Latinos and women, and then when you go to boards, another one, it's a pyramid, and I would say on top, I guess venture capital is one of those where, I always tell my people that we're recruiting is saying we're in the tip of the mountain because in cybersecurity, there may be about 3,000 companies. By definition, there are about 3,000 CEOs. And how many venture capitalists you think are investing in that? And I think we're probably about 20 maximum in doing that in venture capital in cybersecurity. So I said we're very privileged, and therefore make sure that you know how we deal with that. Time is almost running out. The other thing is I wanted to just settle difference. Everybody talks about entrepreneurship and innovation. Make sure that a lot of you, we all say we're innovators, but you can be an innovator within a big company. Entrepreneurs are very different. It's a different breed of people. Those are the ones that failure is not an option. People take risks, leave comfortable positions to create their own companies, and it takes a lot of endurance because nothing goes on a straight line. And so I want to ensure that, you need to, everybody talks about the Silicon Valley dream, and there's a huge difference between just being an innovator and an entrepreneur. I'm not going to spend too much time because I guess we only have half an hour. The other thing is talking about what makes a successful innovation entrepreneurship ecosystem. I did this, part of this speech, I was invited to CADE Digital, the very first CADE in Peru that was done last year. There was a keynote speakers, but we always talked about the ecosystem, what makes Silicon Valley unique. And reflecting is not just entrepreneurs, but it starts with the universities, it starts with government. We're beginning to see the elements here in TECHSUYO, how this works. We need corporations to lean in, and the corporations are the ones that support the entrepreneurs by buying the products, taking a risk, helping them evolve their businesses. And then you need venture capital. It's not just about the capital. People say, if we would have venture capitalists in Peru, then we're done. Venture capitalists, if the government doesn't give you incentives for tax and everything else, they will never take the risk, and therefore the entrepreneur will never be able to sell to corporations. The importance of advisors, everybody takes that for granted, but in Silicon Valley you have some of the best and brightest attorneys, auditors that know how to help you structure companies because it's not all companies are equal. There's a reason why a lot of companies get started in Delaware, not in everywhere else. And even if you start in Peru, there's taxation issues for founders that even though you'll be successful, you get killed in taxes. And then obviously, entrepreneurs will generate jobs, wealth creation, help the progress. They become role models for others to succeed, and eventually you can achieve global leadership. This is just, probably you've seen this slide. Many people say, why don't you comment about what are the different phases of a startup? Everybody thinks that venture capital is the first stop. No, not really. The first stop is your idea. From idea to expansion to maturity and growth, you have different people working in the whole ecosystems. The first people who give you money is your bootstrapping. Sometimes you mortgage your house, you get your credit card to get started moving, then you convince friends, families, and fools, which are called angels. They give you money. And eventually, if you make enough progress, you eventually get to become funded by a venture capital firm. But eventually, then you start trying to take your company public and see how in the bottom is you haven't made money yet. You spend all this money, and when you cross that middle line is when you become profitable. You're beginning to make money, and eventually, you take your company public and grow it, or basically get acquired by a different company. But interesting slides that, again, there were interesting things for me. So also, what people said, so how do you decide to invest in a company? Everybody says team, team, team. Yes, a team has to be subject matter experts, people that really know what they're doing and really try to help, and they can be successful. But at the end of the day, you have to look for the market opportunity. If it's a big market, not only has to be big, but has to be rapidly growing, because if it's an established market, it's not growing very fast. And VCs don't necessarily say, well, it's already established companies, competition, I'm not going to take a risk. But if it's a market that is brand new, it's open and all that, and it's growing very fast, I will take a bet. Second thing, your offering, your product, your service has to be very different, has to be differentiated, because there are many of them. For one company, there are probably 10 of those. What makes you unique? And that's the importance of intellectual property, patents, ideas, service, uniqueness, etc. And then, how do you go to market, the ecosystem? Because if it's the only way to do it is I'm only going to be successful by selling by myself and adding salespeople, it doesn't work. You need to have an ecosystem of people that can co-market your product, co-sell your product, resell your product, OEM your product, and eventually scale in a massive way. And of course, team becomes super important, and then investors. So if you lined up all these 5 criteria, then you have high chances to be invested in a company. So again, market, IP, intellectual property, go-to-market strategy, team, your co-founders and people. And the team changes along the way. It's not like the founding team starts, but eventually, you bring a lot of people with a lot of experience to help you scale. And eventually, the people that are investing in you give you a lot of credibility, because other investors follow them. If they're the best in what they do, same thing happens. It's a herd mentality. My lessons learned, I think a lot of those have been already shared by many of the speakers yesterday. Never stop learning. I learn every day. I get to, curiosity is important, creativity is very important, and you have to have a lot of attention to detail. Because if you think, oh yeah, you could be, people said a mile wide and an inch deep, meaning so you know a lot about everything but very little. You need to be the other way around. Something that you have the passion, be a mile deep and maybe an inch wide. So it's important to have that. Obviously, people having worked at Apple for 10 years and many other companies, business is about customers. It's not just about the user interface. It's all about centering the design of your product or offering exclusively into how you're going to help that, how you're going to evolve, whether it's the country, it's healthcare, whatever. You need to figure out how you're going to be able to do centered around users and people that need to do that. The other thing is, in order to be successful for me, it's been establishing relationships in the different companies I have. To this date, I keep in touch with many of the people that I recruited at Apple, or that recruited me at Apple, and taught me the importance of not staying in your cube or working, but going out to lunch every day, even though you're busy and you have deadlines. Just trying to get to know other parts of the company, and it really, really helps you create that community. And eventually, there's something called relationship equity. Everybody talks about being equity. I probably have, if you look at my phone right now, I have more like 14,000 contacts, and meaningful in a way that anywhere that I land, if I land in Singapore, I know who the people to call to be able to help my company succeed. The telcos, the investors, the people that will take risks, entrepreneurs, etc. So very, very important to develop your own relationships. And it's not about taking, it's about giving. You give first, eventually you get a lot more back. Obviously, you have to take risks, and not everybody's in the same position. When I left Apple, I took a big risk, but I had my partner, my wife, and she was the one that had the permanent job, and I had the one taking the risk. So you balance out risks, build your family along the way, but you have to take calculated risk and always look for excellence, because being a Latino, being a female or whatever in this, if you're good enough, they're not going to give you the chance. You have to be excellent if they're going to try to get you. And there are many successful leaders here in the room that I've gotten to know over the years that, again, because of their excellence, they've been able to be recognized in different roles and roles of leadership. And then you need to be a team player, and don't forget about giving back. You know, your community and being a role model is super important. And, you know, this embodies a lot of what TECHSUYO is all about, trying to get us to collaborate, share experiences, and really build a community to be successful. So we had time for maybe 1 or 2 questions, because I almost took the 30 minutes that we had. This 10:40. So we're almost 10 minutes, which is great. So open. I can talk about any other subject more, and I have more slides, but I'd rather have you ask questions so that I can share whatever perspectives you may want me to share.
Hello. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, your insight as a CEO, as an investor, and as a leader of the Hispanic community. Thank you so much for that.
Thank
so
you.
A round of applause for him, please.
Thank you. Thank you to you guys.
So yes, we have time for questions now. So if you have a question, I will ask you to come up here. There is a game going on, so wireless, it's not working as appropriate. So we have the mic. Can you please come for questions?
Morning, Alberto. Thanks for your words. I know we are here because we're trying to connect to the Silicon Valley, but having your experience, could you give us your take on how is the market moving besides the Silicon Valley, maybe Asia?
Yeah, you know, great question, and I had a couple of slides to do this, but I hesitated to do this. You know, if you think about the United States, we're very proud, we're #1, et cetera, country in the world, we're being challenged by China, et cetera. But you know, if you go look at the Fortune 100, the top 10 companies in the world today are technology companies. If you looked in 1955, there were companies that were established, Ford Motor Company, GM, people that did a lot of manufacturing and all that. The world has changed significantly. U.S. is also being challenged, and the only way we're trying to play now is with you know, trade wars and balances and all that, which is very important. But I would say the world is changing significantly, and the U.S. is trying to figure out how to keep its edge by being a technological powerhouse. What we export is things like Apple, Facebook, Google. If you look at the top 10 companies, the majority, Amazon, that's what we do, and we're using technology to innovate. We have a lot of wannabes, and people in China copy this stuff really well. But they are also, you know, you go to Taiwan, you go to other places, excellence in manufacturing and everything else. So it's, you know, and people talk about things like IoT. So who are the groups, the Internet of Things, and how that's going to change is because we have communications in cloud and all this stuff. How is that going to change significantly? The views that we have from here is the Teslas, the companies that are going to change the way we do different things. But eventually, when you go to manufacturing hubs around the world, is the Nordic countries, is Germany, is Mexico, is Taiwan, and things are changing. So I would say and then in Peru, we had tremendous opportunity because we have a lot of natural resources. How do we do that in a way that is differentiated? I'm always very proud when I walk into Costco or Whole Foods, and many of our products are there, and they're organic. That's amazing. So we need to figure out what is our core and how to make it better, and excellence will drive it. And therefore, you know, I would say you need to understand your situational awareness of where you had higher chances to succeed. I wouldn't want to have Peru just be a supplier to others. I think we can be leaders in many aspects. I think in mining and other places we have a lot of interesting opportunities, and we have great educational institutions. Many people talk about the problems that we have in education in Peru. Guess what? The U.S. has similar problems. So it's the whole tech and STEM is not just about that, but I think we need to focus on grooming the specific industries that we need to go after, and every region will have its own way to dealing with that. But I think that there's a general growth and there's optimism despite all the market going up and down. I think there's an optimism that the world is becoming hyper-connected and there will be multiple opportunities to succeed. Want a question?
Hi, Alberto. Thank you for your insights, your information, and for being here. It's amazing to talk to you.
Yeah.
One question about this slide, which for me is amazing because it kind of summarizes all your experience or all the wisdom that you got over the years. So thank you for that. And it's about mentors and mentee, right? There is no information about what is the best way to approach someone. It's not as easy as telling, you know what, I want you to be my mentor. So I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about what is the best way to approach someone, for example, if you want for mentorship. Sure. And also if you can share who are your current mentors.
Oh, excellent, yes. Look, throughout your career, you had different mentors. There's not such a thing as having one mentor. At Apple, I remember there were people that worked in my same department that had been there for a longer time, and they became mentors because they taught me how to network, they taught me how to get aware of other places. So throughout your career, it's having an interest, not just in doing your job, but all the other things that surround your job, and eventually, what is the mission of the company? And people are open. It's just, let's go. The way always been successful getting mentors, say, hey, I'll buy you lunch, let's go out. And then taking the time and getting to know the individual, getting to know their own wants and needs in their career, and being open. You'll be surprised. Many of us that come here to share our experience, people want to do that. And when you're turning around and saying, you know, is there any way we can get together maybe once a quarter, you know, or time to time, so because I may have some questions, this is my aspirations. This is how I got promoted at Apple. My first mentors helped me, you know, understand and focus on my business and eventually evolve. And my current mentor is my co-founder of Forge Point, which is has been in venture capital for more than 33 years. And he's one of the legends in the market, and he's been very generous. At the beginning, he didn't know what I was, what were my motivations, but now you being a co-founder, they teach you about not making mistakes. But at the same time, let's make a big difference between a mentor and a sponsor. There are big differences on that. And a sponsor is somebody who's going to is in your same company, perhaps in the same chain of management, that decides, between the three of you, I'm going to pick you because I think you will have the biggest chances to succeed. But sponsors want to take a risk because they have their own reputation and brand. They want to make sure that whoever they sponsor are going to succeed. So I had many sponsors throughout my career at Apple, at Oracle, and multiple places. So you keep on learning. So I would say you may think it's very difficult to get mentors. You need to be sensitive on their time and how they want to do that. But I think people are more willing to spend the time. Especially, and you also have to be sensitive that it's not about taking, but also giving. That's key.
Thank you. We have time for one more question.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, 2 questions, please.
2 questions, okay. Yes, thank you.
Hello, Alberto. First of all, I think you are a proudest Peruvian from my point of view. I would like to ask you, what was the more meaningful experience or anecdote that you have in your entire life that caused more impact, or socially, economically, that you would like to share with us?
Well, that's a difficult question because I think life is an accumulation of experiences. But I would tell you, I think one of my mentors in associating meaningful experiences, look, I was lucky throughout my career. You know, of course, I tried to excel in what I did, was really good student, #1 in my class, and I went to La Uni when there were 40,000 people applying, 2,000 people coming in, and the first 200 got to electronic engineering, and I got in the first time, right? And it's interesting because, you know, it's all about excellence and all that. But, you know, I would say I owe my success, obviously, to my family, my parents. My mother was always pushing me really hard to always be the best. But, you know, the Jesuits play a big, important role because the Jesuits were missionaries, you know, the priests. And then they went and established a school in the middle of the desert in Tacna, and my father helped them with a number of things. But then they continue their labor. So there's a priest by the name of Father Green, Fred Green, who had actually been the principal of this school. And because of a lot of the work that he did, I instilled a lot of principles of giving back and also being excellent. Long story short, he's 97 today. He's created multiple schools, multiple things, and then the ability to work with them and bring the students from USF, which is also a Jesuit school, to help the schools in Tacna, try to put computers, help create mentorship, and not just in technology, but there's a group in the dancing department in USF that is working in a Fe y Alegría school in one of the Habitat for Communities in Tacna. They're teaching kids math by dancing. So being able to bring together a lot of your experiences and inspirations to help you do that has been probably the most meaningful thing. Sorry I couldn't do that.
Thank you for sharing. The last question.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for being here on a Saturday morning.
Yes.
My question is in regards to Latin America being a region that usually provides primary products, or like you mentioned, you're really proud when you go into Costco and you see organic products from Peru, which I think makes everyone proud when you see your Latin American country represented. However, I'm a big component of actual development in Latin America, and I'm wondering what you think the region needs or could do so that we move away from primary production and actually are able to develop more tech and more innovation.
Great. I got your question because I'm passionate about this, because everybody says, oh yeah, and we need to put more money, we need better schools. You know, we have developments everywhere. Look, venture capital in Latin America and emerging economies has been alive and well even before in the Silicon Valley. The venture capital groups in those regions are the economic groups. The problem is they're close. You have Grupo Romero, Grupo, Slim in Mexico, and they're really, they want to build their own businesses, and the only people they trust is the family. Guess what? The original members of those groups the next generations don't have the same fire in their belly, so they're being challenged right now. They're being challenged to include people from outside, people with good education. Sometimes they recruit people. I remember they got a guy from Google, the Grupo ACE took one of the guys, Dañaños brought in a guy that had been in IBM, Microsoft, Google, and they brought him as their CFO. Anyway, so I'm saying those groups are going to open up, and this is why you should pay attention to Endeavor. Endeavor is an organization that has many of the family members of the people that really started with that innovation to help entrepreneurs in Peru. If you look at the Endeavor Peru companies, their companies are doing juice, natural uses. They're doing, many companies like Chasqui who are doing delivery stuff, using technology to be able to mirror that. So I'm telling you, it's the ecosystem that is necessary. So government is beginning to make some progress. Startup Peru is an example, but not enough. Chile put 200 million in the beginning of Startup Chile. We put 20 million. A lot of it is the for opportunity for our government people at the time. We need to have a scale. But you have things like the Startup Peru, you have a lot of things like TECHSUYO. We need to connect the dots to be able to do that. But in addition, government needs to give more changes on the tributary and taxation so that we can allow corporations to give money, venture capital groups to be able to invest, to be able to do that. So there's not one single, I would say, silver bullet. Is bringing this into one cohesive and collaboration to be able to do. It's very hard, but I've been involved with the new university. What is it? That is right by in Miraflores. What is it? UTEC. I've been a member with them. I help them shape some of their stuff. I came to speak in 2 or 3 of their events, and a lot of it has been for me saying, you guys you have a great, excellent education, and you don't have to have money to go there. You have to be really good. But I say you need to connect the dots, and the corporations that you're working with need to be the ones hiring the kids graduating so they can have experience. Of course, they want to be able to have relationships with Berkeley, with MIT, with Stanford. Say, yeah, you have that, but what does that mean? You need to be able to create that. It's creating that ecosystem to be able to succeed. It's a much longer conversation, but I just want to congratulate all the founders of, TECHSUYO, SB Peru, and Prom Peru. They are here, and humbled to be here sharing the experiences. It's all about getting and collaborating. You can find me in LinkedIn. Send me a note, and happy to collaborate and integrate. Okay? Thank you.